Hi, welcome back to Quack Wax. You'll notice that this is, in fact, not wax. I decided that it would be really fun to try and learn how to paint with gouache. Don't ask me why, it just seemed like, hey, let's try something completely new that we've never tried before. Um, in all honesty, though, both my grandparents, my grandma on my dad's side and my grandma on my mom's side, are really creative people. And so are their siblings, actually. So the idea of painting has been around, but it's just not something that I've done since when I was in high school. So I thought, hey, why not? Why not try it? And I thought, hey, if I'm gonna try this, so many people will show you their like cool, fancy thing, and they're like, oh, I'm just a beginner, but they show you an amazing painting, and I thought, I'm just gonna show you uh, my real painting. So this right here is the first time I've touched gouache to paper. I just mixed some colors and made some patterns. And today's video, the point is real time, what a first painting might look like. Well, what my first painting does look like in gouache. And if you're used to wax seal content. I'm sorry that I'm not delivering with that today, but I think it's kind of cool to just chase our passions. I like a lot of different types of crafts, and I hope to just kind of share what's interesting with me on this channel. It's been a while since I've posted, so hello again. Yeah, so I'm gonna be slow in this video. This is not a tutorial. I literally have no idea what I'm doing. I did watch a couple of YouTube tutorials. Uh, and that's about it. Today's project was really just I want to hold a paintbrush and dip it in paint and see how that feels. I want to know what it looks like when I mix colors together because it turned out feeling so much differently than it did when I mixed colors with wax seals. I feel like it's just a different beast, it's a different medium, and it was really fun to explore. But I wanted to share this with you because I guess it's just so infrequent that we see people share what a beginner actually looks like, how clumsy it can feel, how long it can take to come with a finished project that maybe just isn't a masterpiece. um, and like people will say, I've seen this online, I don't know if you have, but they'll say, come make bad art with me, and then they show you just like this really cool stuff, and I do think it's cool to make fun stuff, uh just get loose with it and see what happens, and I think it's really cool when something beautiful comes of that. But I also think more often than not, as a true beginner, you're not going to be wowed by what you do necessarily. You're just going to see what the process is like. And so that's what this video is. If you have something like that you've wanted to try, I heartily invite you to join me on this process because it was a lot of fun. And I feel like there's just so much pressure to be perfect, you know? There's so much pressure to make art that's good, even though it's something that we're doing for our own fun. So let's just have fun. I'm showing you here the paper that I'm working on. Um, it's 140-pound watercolor paper that I'm using. I got it because I went to Blick, and the lady at Blick said, I like this because it can pop right out and then you can put it back in when you're done. And I thought that's handy. I'm gonna do that. I had never been into a Blick before this project, actually. It's a lot of fun. Maybe a dangerous place for somebody like me who likes arts and crafts. But here I'm showing you the texture. It's like a cold pressed, and since I'm a beginner, I'll share what I've learned so far. The cold pressed tends to have that texture to it, and the hot pressed tends to be more smooth, I've learned. So just showing the process of putting that other page back in there. I have a couple of other pages that I've done different experiments with watercolors and stuff in the past in there, but it's a pretty fresh book that I got from Blick, and it's been fun to just mess around with it. I got this tape as well. Uh, they say that if you use a hair dryer on hot, that it will release from the paper without taking any paper with it. Sadly, that has not been my experience, as you saw when I ripped off the paper from the first, I guess, painting that I did. And I just do this on every single painting, I guess, because uh, it feels like it keeps things neat around the edges. I kind of like the idea of a margin. So I'm showing the process of putting this on. So exact. Perfectly in line. I don't know why I get so perfectionist about stuff like that, but then will just kind of loosely slap paint on something. It's just how I'm built, I guess. My mom is a person who would tell me my whole childhood, use a ruler, get out a ruler and draw the line straight. And I'd be like, nah, I'll freehand it. I don't know why, but that's really funny to me. I probably just stressed her unnecessarily so much because of that. Oh. You should tell me if me kind of having this stream of consciousness is entertaining or distracting for you. I can make videos in the future where I don't do a voiceover. Which, for people who do voiceovers, you know, people who maybe don't have a professional recording studio like myself, where do you record your videos in your house so that you don't have lots of noise? Because I'm sitting in my closet because it was the quietest place to be. It's pretty hot in here. It's kind of uncomfortable, but I have to say, like, this is such a quiet place. It's very calm in here. It seemed like the only place in the house where I could record this voiceover. Oh. Anywho's, so what I'm doing right now is kind of hard to see the pencil, but I'm trying to very lightly draw some kind of a scene that I can paint in. So I initially envisioned a kind of rolling hills with a horizon, and my general idea, I didn't have a big plan coming into this, I'll say. But my general idea was that I wanted to paint some kind of pretty sky and then do some mountains and just see where that went. Um, Really, this was about, like, how can I control my paintbrush? How can I mix a color? And I had a lot of fun with that, but because I had very little planning or forethought going into what the actual painting would be, um it it did kind of get away from me. Spoiler alert. The gouache that I'm using is just like a basic set. So it has white, black, and then the primary colors. And so I just decided I'll start with this very basic set because I do like to jump hobbies and just try different things out, and I didn't want to invest a whole lot in really fancy art supplies that I wasn't using. And I figured, mixing paint is fun. Maybe that was half the reason I wanted to do this anyway, and that purpose would be best solved by this set also. But right now, what I'm focusing on is trying to do a sky. And as you can see, when I grabbed all that red, it really shifted. I thought that I just grabbed the tiniest bit and that it would be like this light kind of orange juice type of color. And instead, it became much darker. So I'm trying to like adjust the color here to be a little bit more what I had envisioned, and I did add a little bit more red. I think, I was just winging it the entire way through. But it was a really pleasant time. The palette that I'm using is one of those stay wet palettes. I read the instructions and still didn't really feel like I knew how to use it, so I just slapped the paint on there. I knew I had to get it wet, but I didn't know how wet the palette was supposed to be. So the other markings of paint that you already see on there are more kind of like stains. They are from when I did that first little painting at the beginning that was more of just a sketch to play around a little bit. And then I washed those colors off when I was done, like week or two passed, and then when I got this out again, I re-wet it, and I believe that you can do that quite a few times before you need to use a replacement sheet of paper on the top. The core is kind of like a sponge, and so it can kind of help your paints stay moist while you're working on stuff. Here we go. First blotch. Since doing this video, I have seen a few more tutorials and learned a little bit more about the difference between watercolor and gouache. And um if I were to give advice to somebody who's just starting like myself, something that I did not do is I didn't get like a test piece of paper to see what my color would look like before I put it on my actual paper. And that's something that a lot of the pros do. So, my bad, but that's something that you can learn from my mistake in the future if you are hoping to learn gouache. And like I heard a lot of people describing gouache really positively online, saying they loved to paint with it because it's just so creamy. It feels so good. And I was like, well, we all kind of like our hobby. What does that mean? But they're right. There's something about it that just feels very nice and creamy, very velvety, silky smooth to paint with. And part of that is that you can add more water and that can shift it to be transparent. But even when it has um, more of an opaque type of texture to it, it just feels really nice to move around on the paper. And so that was really cool. I've, gotten a little bit uh, confused. I almost want to say frustrated, but it's not that strong. It's just when you truly just don't know what you're doing, but you want to get better at something, but also you're too busy hopping from thing to thing to truly become better at it. Uh, I remember during a time like that in the past where I was working with watercolor, it was just a struggle the whole time for me. And I think it's just because between painting around negative space, um, between trying to figure out how to mix color, because I was mostly just taking directly from the paints themselves and not really mixing colors. So it was like, why does mine, look like a box of crayons rather than all of these different muted colors? And so that's something that I've kind of learned over time, that I was able to see in this, even though it's my first time with gouache, I was able to get to a point where I learned, hey, this is how uh I can start to think about actually mixing different colors together. A bold choice indeed. I was kind of trying to go for like almost Lion King esque type vibes here. Don't know if that's coming across or not, but yeah, I just want to say again that this was a lot of fun, and my goal was not to make something gorgeous. It was just to mess around with the paints, and I just feel like, for example, when I was working at the library, people would come up to me and they'd say, I don't know how my device works. And I would be like, oh, let me help you. And I didn't know how their device worked. But I was willing to just kind of pick up the device and click around and, oh, here's the settings. Okay, let's do a quick search online. I know your problem. I have the device. I have my search engine. And just clicking around a little bit would solve, I want to say, like 99% of problems. And it always is good to ask for help. Um, a lot of people are also afraid to ask for help these days, but just the ability to say, I'm just going to give it a shot and see how it goes, and be willing to click around even when you don't know what something does. uh, the worst case scenario is usually not very bad. It's hard for you to have a catastrophic failure with um, most devices, with most paintings. Uh, if you're trying something new and you're like, oh man, I'm so intimidated by the process, I get it, man. I really do. But I also know that um, usually you just kind of have to click around until you find the settings, if you know what I mean. Like, you just have to pick up the brush until you realize, oh, that's a little bit too much water that I've added. And now the color, it looks a little bit muddy, but okay, learn that. It's not like this one page is going to be, giving me my final grade in the class. There is no class. We're just having fun. I actually have a story that I want to tell you from a time that I was at a bookstore recently. It was a used bookstore, and I'm going to show you a book. This is the book that I found. It says Mrs. Browning on the front cover, and that's it. And I saw the kind of gilded Art Nouveau decorations in the front of this cover, and I thought, this is something special. I thought it was very cool. So I open the front cover. I don't know if you can see this. It says first edition 1887. This is a book from 1887. And what it is a kind of best of collection of the poetry of Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And in the front, there was this ephemera, which was really cool. But even more interesting to our current discussion, there was this advertisement. So I'm going to talk to you about it right now. It says, this edition, including my earlier and later writings, I have endeavored to render as little unworthy as possible of the indulgence of the public. Several poems I would willingly have withdrawn if it were not almost impossible to extricate what has been once caught and involved in the machinery of the press. The alternative is a request to the generous reader that he may use the weakness of those earlier verses, which no subsequent revision has succeeded in strengthening, less as a reproach to the writer than as a means of marking some progress in her other attempts. London, 1856. So, this book, written by somebody who was so successful with her poetry that she had a full poetry collection back in a time when the average person, like a person who was learned, read poetry quite often. This was a thing that people did for fun. We talk about like watching YouTube shorts. They read poems because that's what they had, right? She was known to be good at this. She was a professional. She was a poet. And at the beginning of her book, she said, "Hey guys, sorry I have these bad poems in here. It's old, but don't look too badly on me. If nothing else, it just shows that I made at least a little progress in my time. There's no need to be this humble." Why was she this humble? Why do we all still to this day? I especially find this with ladies. We just find like it doesn't matter if you're a pro or a beginner, you're saying, "Oh, sorry that I made something." Sorry that I made something and that it may not have been the best thing you've ever read. It may not be the best painting you've ever seen. Um but if you're beloved enough that you're able to sell a collection of poetry like this, I mean, I just I'm I become flabbergasted that these patterns repeat themselves. We still do this today. So, in any event, I wanted to share this because this is what I'm talking about when I say we're also concerned about being perfectionist. It's not something new. we're we're just repeating the patterns of Mrs. Browning. And there's a reason we do it. What if it doesn't serve us? Then let's just say, yeah, I made a painting today rather than I made a good painting or a bad painting. Just I painted. I painted and I did enjoy myself. It was a good time. I also, you know, I as I'm watching this, sometimes I get like a death grip on that brush. I don't know if I'm holding the brush in the right way even, but I enjoyed myself and mixing the paint right here was some of the most fun. And as I mix these colors, I did remember from some of the tutorials that I saw, sometimes they'd get a little crazy and they'd say, "Oh, there's going to be a touch of yellow in this purple. There'll be a little bit of red in this green." And it just shifts it from feeling quite so crayon box type colors. It can muddy them, is the term that people use. I guess if you use too much. But yeah, it just shifts it just a little bit to make it a little less saturated feeling so that it's a little calmer on the eye. And so I had a lot of fun just seeing, okay, how much color does it take to shift that paint? Um how much black do I need to add to something before it just becomes a black blob? How much water do I add to it, especially with this palette that's wet on the inside? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to use it. But I'm gonna keep on learning and figure it out. Okay, so I did test the color just a bit on my paper towel there, so I was thinking a little bit about uh how I could make the color I wanted and what that would actually look like. Hope my arm isn't getting in that blob of paint, but here we go. this kind of like stormy, almost like a steel blue gray type of color is my mom's absolute favorite color. And she recently bought herself some pants in this color and they didn't fit, so she gave them to me. And I'm wearing them right now. So comfortable. But as I'm doing this painting, I'm adding a lot of water, and it is quite see through. And I kind of realized that as I was going. Gouache is kind of meant to be opaque. You can do what you want, but I decided that I was going to do a second coat after all this is done. And the thing that's kind of nice is because even though I did kind of add a lot of water in this first coat, it dries pretty quick, especially compared to watercolor, at least the little dabbling that I've done. So, I mean, I was able to paint this right after painting the sky. This is real time. So, just the time it took for me to mix the paint was enough for it to dry enough that I didn't have to worry about these two different colors bleeding into one another. And if I wanted to, I could have mixed them by adding a lot more water. Felt like a ninja applying that line. It just felt like I had a lot more control over the brush than I thought that I was going to have. For some reason, I really thought that controlling the brush was just going to be hard. Oh, yeah, look at that. There's a little bit left over. Go back in. Yeah. Yeah, I love to see it. Yeah, this was a blast. I cannot recommend enough. This was so much fun. Highly, highly recommend. I didn't really know how to set up my phone to record all this, so I have it on a tripod, just kind of looking down on the painting itself, but I realize it might be odd to not see the water cups. So sorry for my novice. Oh no, I'm doing it again. Because not only am I a novice painter, I am kind of a novice video maker. And so I was just going on about how we shouldn't apologize for being a beginner at something, and then I was apologizing for being a beginning video maker. The irony. Uh, yeah, anyways, not sorry. But I'm learning. I am learning how to frame shots perhaps a little bit better in the future so you can see all the steps. I'm adding the yellow to the purple because I'm wild and crazy. Yeah, I think that for a second I was like, is this gonna be more brown than purple? But also it's a mountain, so I got just a touch concerned. But I really liked the color. This would have been helpful though to test on a piece of paper before I put it down, but that's fine. That brush is, I believe, either round 6 or a round 8, by the way, in case you're curious. And I just decided to keep with this one size brush the whole way through. I tend to do that with a lot of things. I'll find a tool that I like and then I just stick with that one tool. So, like, I'll be, using a hammer for something I should use a screwdriver for, and somebody will say, "Hey, why are you doing that?" And I'll think, well, this hammer works pretty well. And they'll say, we have different tools for a reason. So, sometimes my methods are a little strange and unorthodox, but it works for me. I think the thing that pops up about that most specifically that I remember is as a teenager, me and my dad would go ride our bikes sometimes. And he'd be like, "Why aren't you using your gears?" And I'd think, I I don't need these mystical gears. Oh, it was so satisfying to look at that paint. That's more important than the story. Oh, look at that. So satisfying. But yeah, I couldn't use the gears. I could, and I couldn't make myself do it. It was just, I found the gear that I like, and I'm gonna stick with it whether we're going uphill or downhill, much to his confusion. But I don't know why I'm like that. It's just a fact that I've accepted. It's a pig-headedness, I suppose. There's also like, oh, I got this. I understand it. I want to stick with this thing I understand rather than trying something else. Maybe it's a great place for me to grow. So my favorite colors are green and purple. It doesn't matter to me that the colors in this painting are not necessarily realistic. That really wasn't the goal. It was more kind of like, can I mix, I like green, I like purple. Can I mix these colors that I like in different ways so that I can kind of create different shades and hues within these colors I like, and then pick one to put in my painting kind of a situation. So, um, if you're wondering why I chose the colors that I chose, it was a lot of just, yeah, base instinct guiding me towards things I knew I liked. And that was a lot of fun. I feel like I did spend a lot more time mixing certain colors than other colors, kind of adjusting warmer and then cooler and then back again. I think that this section really shows what people say when they mean paint feels so smooth. It's just a delight to move around on the page. It feels very nice. Something that I'm kind of interested in that um, appeals to me because at this point I'm more interested in just color and moving the brush around on the page more so than making an actual scene is Zentangles. I haven't done a whole lot of that in the past, and anytime I've done any kind of thing similar to that, it just is very nice. It's very pleasant, but it's one of those things that a lot of times I think I felt it didn't count as much unless I had done something I felt was properly impressive. So It wasn't something that I've spent a lot of time learning, but it's one of those things that's just very satisfying and soothing, and it serves a plenty great purpose. It can be a great art, but it can be a great way to practice mindfulness. And so I think I may try doing some of that in the future just because it it's just uh it's just fun. It just seems like something that I'd really like to try with these paints. I was kind of aware that I had different opacities going on this layer, and I just didn't let myself get bothered by it. So I knew I'd be coming back to it. Get another green. I just have loved green since I was really little. My parents took me camping a lot as a kid, like even when I was, a couple months old, little, they would take me on camping trips. And they had a little tent trailer when I was really little, and I guess I was unsupervised in the tent trailer for a little while they were working on the camp or something. I don't know. And they came back in, and right about at the height of a 3-year old, there was green crayon all over the tent trailer. And they were like, huh, whose favorite color is green? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Couldn't be me. There was no one for me to blame it on. I don't. They told me these stories, and I'm like, oh, really? I said that? Sorry. I don't know. Don't know why. But yeah, it's a lifelong passion. My love of green. And a little red in there just to get sassy. Maybe a little bit too much. We'll see. I'm realizing this looks orange. What happens if I add the green into it? You know, even in that moment where I was like, huh, this shifted the color in a way I didn't expect, I added a little bit too much. I never felt panicky. I just kind of, I mean, it kind of looks like I'm moving the brush around in a way that could be construed that way, but I'm telling you, my heart was not panicked. I just added a little bit more blue, and then it was kind of more this like muted, uh, more olivey, sagey type of green that I had decided that I wanted to put at the hill in the front, and it fixed it pretty fast. But I didn't know what would fix it. I was just moving colors around, so I'm really sorry that this is slightly out of focus. I just kind of let it do what it was gonna be, and it all worked out. It was fun even when I had a result that I wasn't really expecting, and I think in part that's because the stakes were low. I kept them low on purpose just so that I could explore. And so no matter what I did, whether it looks good or bad, it's serving the purpose of exploring, and my goal was met because of that. There's some paint at the end of my brush that wasn't perfectly mixed that I noticed at this point kind of went down onto the paper and mixed in. I'm noticing details that kind of escaped me earlier, but it's all kind of flowing together, anyways. I didn't mix up a ton of paint for the bottom here, and I realized by this point, like, hey, I'm kind of running out, and I don't know if I can mix up more and match this color. But also, I was kind of determined to try and just make it last the whole way across because I didn't want to have to mix more color. So I got a little bit creative here. I did add a lot of water, but yeah, it was interesting and I guess a learning curve for me to learn how much space um, a certain amount of paper would take to cover, if that makes sense. Like, how much paint do I need to make in advance to cover a section? And I know that that can depend on your paper, which is even the pros will say, hey, like, you should do some test swatches on the paper that you plan to use so that you know how everything will react together. And I didn't really do that too much. I didn't really know. Um, this kind of is my test swatch in a lot of ways, you know. Like I'm calling it a painting, but it's a test. So I've learned if I want to cover a significant portion and have it look opaque, I need to mix up a lot more paint than what I had made originally for this section. Like those strokes there, the amount of water and the way that the paint reacted, they just felt delightful to do. I've learned that if you get this paper too wet and go at it aggressively like this from multiple angles, it will kind of start to pill. So I learned that while I was messing around with some watercolors. So that's another reason why I like the gouache because it doesn't take as much water. It's a little bit more forgiving on this kind of cheaper paper that's not as uh, heavy. And I also think it has to do with the fact that it's not 100% cotton paper. There's a lot that I have to learn on even just the topic of paper. So I decided I need to really clean off my brush and the water too. The water had become pretty opaque by this second coat, and so I replace it here somewhere. Looks like I was just trying to get a touch of yellow and white for this color. A very light yellow. It almost looks blue-gray. Wasn't the color I expected at all. I think I chuckled actually when I saw what what my little highlights on my clouds looked like. I was like, oh, that's not the color I hoped it would be, and I did not try and fix it. I was like, this is what it is. At this point, it's been 43 minutes. Thank you for coming along this ride with me, friend. Even as I sat here painting this in real time, I was kind of thinking, I'm a little tired. I kind of want to do another activity soon. So I just didn't feel like super touching these up. I got a little bit of white to put on top and um wasn't necessarily the way that I hoped that it would look. So yeah, it it looked this way. I learned something from that. I was trying to be loose with my brush and kind of set the paint down in a kind of I tried to set the paint down in a kind of free way, but the color was just not quite what I was trying to get when I mixed it. Or maybe, maybe it's a color theory problem and I just didn't understand what I needed to mix in order to make it look the way I envisioned. I like that cloud because it reminds me of like a flying yam with the like Thanksgiving marshmallows on top. I was trying to clean my brush and the blue just kept coming out of it. And so I was like, oh, I'll go in and clean it again. And at a certain point, I had done it so many times that I was like, well, that is what it is. Okay, this keeps coming out that way. Probably part of what impacted my clouds. Yeah. At this point, I was like, well, okay, we're painting with a blue brush because I'm tired. I'm tired of cleaning this off. Okay, I was trying to smooth out my blue so I didn't have way too much. I liked my initial color, and then I was kind of like, ooh, it'd be fun to do kind of like that kind of sea green type blue um, as like a second layer, and then maybe there will be a little bit of depth of color. But like you, I actually don't know what I ended up doing here, so we'll see. Get the yellow to make her like sea green, blue green color. I didn't really know how much blue to like a teal did I want. I wanted it to feel like it was a color that you might actually see in the real world. And I was just trying to figure out how do I make that color. And then I think I ended up with the black adjusting it kind of close to the original color actually. There's just a touch more yellow in it. But um it was kind of a learning experience to me to see like how much does blue shift stuff, how much yellow do you need to shift, how much black shifts. It's a pretty saturated color here still. A lot brighter from the original. Says somebody who hasn't made a ton of videos. Um, Part of the reason I didn't zoom on the palette during that last bit is because it was just simply out of frame, and I'm still learning how to hold things so you can see it. Yeah, completely different color there. It is a lot. Um, it's closer to the color that I kind of had in mind, but I also didn't really know what I had in mind, so I think my original thought was that I was gonna see through this color to the kind of streakiness at the bottom to give depth of color, but I made it far more opaque than I had made that first one, so you don't really see what's underneath it, and that is perfectly fine, but it didn't really go to plan. My hand's kind of blocking here, so craning my neck to see what I did. I don't think when I first drew this with a pencil that I envisioned that this would be water in the background. I just kind of thought it would be a distant horizon with more and more mountains, and then when I made it blue, I was like, oh, water, but it's not perfectly straight because I had thought, oh, if these are mountains, it wouldn't be perfectly straight. So, um, little fun tidbit there. I'm adjusting it a little bit more. Added a little bit of water to it. When you use the paint straight from the tube, it's delicious and creamy, but it doesn't spread very easy. So adding just a little bit of water makes it go down a lot more easily on the page. A lot of times when I am doing something, whether it be something like this or reading a book, even, a lot of times I will do some kind of music in the background. And I know a lot of people love audiobooks and podcasts, and I will put on a YouTube video where somebody is similarly just kind of chatting while they work on a craft like this. But I find podcasts and audiobooks to be too high energy for me, too distracting from what I'm doing. I don't know if anybody else is in the same camp, but I pretty much can't do anything else while an audiobook is on. It is overwhelming to my senses. I can't even pair socks and do laundry while listening to one. I just need to like sit and stare at a wall in order to be able to take in an audiobook. It's just better for me to read it myself with my own eyeballs, and I just I think it would be cool to have the choice to be able to do that, but I am built different. I can't do it, and it baffles my husband. Like, he said that before he met me, he had never heard the word overstimulated, or at least he had never heard a person use that word to describe themselves. Uh, and if I had like one of those awards in high school or whatever, like most likely to whatever, mine would be most likely to be overstimulated at any given moment. That's just my MO. So if you're like that, welcome to the club. I I just have to put on either like really calm music or sometimes sit in silence. I know that's kind of a taboo thing to say, but I did this painting in complete silence, and I know that I was recording, but a lot of times like I'll listen to something with earbuds in if I want to listen to something, and I did not opt to do that. I just wanted a quiet afternoon, and I did have to mute the audio of this because sometimes I did not have the luxury of a quiet afternoon. I'm sure many of you can relate. Yeah, that blue just kept coming out of my brush. I was becoming baffled. But yeah, I wonder, how many people experience that same kind of like I want to listen to podcasts. I feel like there's such a wealth of stuff out there. And also, I mean, an audiobook is usually one person talking at a consistent pace for a long time, and I'm trying to imagine it, and I don't have the ability to just stare off into space at my own pace. Like, I've got to have my device on me and press pause to stare off into space and like truly process what's been said, make sure that I have the person's description down so that I'm like imagining the right characters and I'm not mixing them together. uh, and then you have a podcast going on, and you oftentimes have multiple people going back and forth, and then laughter. And I'm thinking of a specific podcast which I won't name, but my husband listens to a beloved celebrity of his who is known for being like kind of a loud man. He laughs so loudly that like the mic kind of blares. It's something that he does like just throughout the day for just a few minutes, like when he's brushing his teeth and stuff. And I have to be like on the opposite side of the house when he does that because hearing that podcast like raises my blood pressure. I don't mean to clutch my pearls in that way, but yeah, it's a lot. I get overwhelmed by noises, particularly just so fast. So I prefer to take in my info by reading. So when somebody does a video like this, when they're just kind of chatting while describing their art process or just talking about thoughts and life in general, I think there's something that must be really grounding to me about seeing the painting come out. And I think something about the art happening tends to kind of slow the speaker down a little bit somehow. That must be why, I don't know. Maybe it's just the topic. Maybe it's just because I like art. But I did this. It was quiet. It was, for the most part, it was a quiet afternoon, and it was just really peaceful to have nothing going on but a completely analog activity. I was really only thinking about mixing colors, putting them down on the page, the feel of the brush in my hand, the fact that the blue was so stuck on the end of my brush. You can see it in this close up how much blue is up there. This is more of a Barney blue or purple. This is a bluishy, like old school, late 80s Barney color. And I didn't necessarily expect that. And I kind of panicked for a second, and then I was like, I think I'm just gonna roll with it. I didn't test this on paper again. I would have known what this looked like if I had put it on paper, but oh, I did. Okay, so I warmed it up just a little bit more of like a grape jelly color. This is that consistency that just feels real nice to paint with. It's very opaque, um, and I just felt like I had a lot of control with the brush when the paint was this consistency. not perfectly following all of those contours, but I really enjoyed the feel of the paints as they went across the page. I didn't try and lift the purple that was there before, I just kind of painted over it, and because it was wet, it kind of just blended in with what I had. But really liked the particular feel of this. It just felt so silky smooth. Normally, you kind of want, if you're doing like a landscape painting, if you're going for any kind of realism to it, you kind of want less saturation in the colors that are further from you and higher saturation closer to you. And I'm aware of that general principle, even though I did not follow it. In fact, I kind of, with my original colors, was a touch closer to what I ended up with after the fact. So, really aggressively trying to clean that brush right now. Because of all the purples and greens, there's just a lot of blue that was involved in um, making it, mixing the paints. I think this may actually be where I changed out my water, just because it looks like I got up from the table. Yeah. There we go. Going back to my darker green. Added some water to the existing color I had mixed first just to kind of wake it up a little bit, even though it's on the palette and the palette does have moisture underneath. It's just adding a little bit of uh, water to it can help push it back into that sponge too, and it helps. And then I realized from my first kind of go through with this painting, I need to add a lot more paint to my mix to be able to cover up that area. So I just was trying to add add paint so that I had enough without shifting the color too much. It's pretty similar to the one in the background, but as I've learned, the paint does dry a slightly different color than it goes on when it's wet. So I think that people who are more experienced with gouache kind of have to develop a bit of a sixth sense as to how the paint's going to dry and how the colors are going to kind of shift as it dries. So smooth. This particular mixture, I feel like I had a really smooth mix of paints. And I did go a lot more opaque in the second coat, which wouldn't have been necessary had I done the stuff more opaquely the first time around. But I guess like I felt that I wanted more practice getting that balance right. So that's why I decided to just go over it a second time. I could have also just decided, oh, I'll do a different painting or whatever, because I'm not crazy tied to this one at all. But it's here. I'm here. It's set up. Let's just go over it again, was kind of more my thought process. Trying to maintain the definition and in some places put the definition back in where I might have painted over lines before. When I first was interested in learning how to do wax seals, it just seemed so mysterious. I couldn't imagine being able to just get my hands on the materials and try it out for myself. It seemed like something that somebody else could do, but not something that I could do. And it just seemed, oh, clearly they must have a lot of skill. There must be a ton of money invested in getting those supplies. This must have taken a crazy long time to figure out how to do all of these different things. And so it didn't even occur to me that I could learn to do it for like a good year after I learned that it was a thing and was watching these wax seal videos online. And I was just so enchanted by trying it. And so when the day finally came that I realized, oh, I could maybe try this, I was hesitant, but I got the supplies and I tried it, and it was lovely. It's one of those things where you can kind of just start as a beginner and there it is. Like, you don't have to have this big practice page like I did necessarily to see the result that you're looking for. In fact, I think my very first wax seal was one of the prettiest things that I made in the first month I was wax sealing. It just came out good. And as I tried to complicate things, that's when it started to get a little bit more difficult to make them look the way that I wanted them to. But my husband was really supportive. At the time, he was my boyfriend. He taped it to his fridge. And I think it might still be up there. He just taped that wax seal up to the fridge because he was so proud of me for trying it, and I was like equally also so proud. And then for a while, I want to say the first 4 months or so, anytime a friend or family member came over, I'd be like, hey, you want to make a wax seal? And they'd look at me with that same kind of look that I remember having of, I don't think I can do this. Like, somebody has to give me permission. Don't I have to sign a waiver? There's just something about it that just seemed like, oh no, like I'm not qualified to do this. And I'd be like, give it a try. And like some people were eager to try. Um, but they loved it. Like I don't think I offered anybody and they were like, oh no, I don't want to do that. They're like, yeah, let me try this. And it was really cool to be able to share that with people. And with painting, I think you can do the same thing. It's just, you don't have to say, hey, let's paint something in this crazy, cool, complicated style. Let's paint something that's gonna impress people. It's just, let's have fun doing some stuff, and then we're gonna put it on the fridge when we're done. And we can decide how long it stays up there, but the point is that we had a good time together. And that's something that's really fun for me and really meaningful for me is being able to share crafts with other people. It looks like I'm adding more paint to my palette because I got to the end and I didn't want to have to, but I was pretty much out of every single one of my colors, and I knew I'd need to mix a lot of paint to cover that hill at the bottom. So I did just a touch of red, a touch of blue, and a touch of yellow, which I probably should have done more yellow because I think I used quite a lot of it in this bottom color, but we'll see. I have kind of gotten better throughout this painting at figuring out how not to overdo the red so that I accidentally end up shifting my color too far, which is kind of cool to see in retrospect. But to what I was saying earlier, I just really feel like I want to encourage people who have a craft to share it with people. Like I especially when I was younger, I don't really know where this came from, but I had this idea that like I could get crazy good at a skill or like at a language. I would learn a language in secret and not tell anybody. And then during a crucial moment where this skill would be needed, all of a sudden I'd be able to bust it out and say, oh, actually, I do speak ancient Latin or whatever. And I thought that that would be a great way to go about life. I just could secretly do stuff, and then only when I was exceptional and perfect could I reveal it to somebody else. Uh, and I don't really know what prompted that belief or fantasy or whatever it was. Ooh, I kind of matched this color pretty well, I would say. Every other color, I ended up shifting it at least a little bit, and this color looks like I pretty much matched my original color that I had made. So that was kind of a victory of this painting. And it looks like I'm trying to go kind of like I did in the beginning with more horizontal strokes to help make it seem a little bit more cohesive because it was certainly a little bit chaotic stroke directions at the first coating. But yeah, I don't know, have any of you ever had that same thing happen in your mind, whether you're really doing it consciously or not, where you're like, I'm gonna save this secret skill and not tell any of my beloved friends or family about it. And one day I'll just kind of wow the socks off of them when I can just bust this out of nowhere. Like, I would go to a fancy hotel one day that had a big grand piano in the front and just sit down and bust out a beautiful song on this piano. Uh, am I alone in this? Is this a fantasy that anybody else ever shared? It was something that I think I thought about quite a lot. I was like, oh yeah, I could have all of these different secret special skills. But like an instrument specifically, you gotta practice in order to be good at it. And it's hard to practice an instrument without a lot of people knowing that you play that instrument because of the sounds. So I'm not really sure where that one came from. We are coming up towards the end of this video. Believe it or not, this painting does not really level up from this point. This is essentially the finished painting. And yet, I'm really proud that I did this because this was me trying gouache for the first time. And it was really fun, and I did learn a lot. And I just really hope that you can feel like you can also just try something. You can try it without having to be good at it. You can try it whether or not somebody sees that you're trying it. You can try it and have it turn out any which way, and it does not matter in the slightest because the point is that you tried it. And this is a soapbox that I want to stand on, you know? I just feel like people need permission. You got my permission, friend. This is me taking the tape off a couple days later, actually, I think, in the evening. So that's why the lighting is different. I did not get my hairdryer out for this. I just could not be bothered, so I just took the tape right off. And you and I are gonna find out together if I rip the paper or not. I think also maybe letting it sit for a couple days probably helped it dry out a little bit. We shall see. I think it was trying to rip down there at the corner. I had to hold it back. It did pretty well. Oh, just a little bit. Well, there we have it. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this journey. And have fun with your own crafts.